everybody, and welcome to Sunday in our home here in Brittany in northwest France. If you're here for the first time, it's good to meet you. If you're returning, nice to see you again. I'm Jane, my husband Mike is behind the camera. We're early retirees, British, debt and mortgage free. We live below minimum wage, well, our level of income is below minimum wage, and we live a really thrifty and frugal life. And every Sunday, we share aspects of that thrifty and frugal lives with you. So let's take a look at what we're going to share with you this week. Now, many times in our Facebook group and many times within the comments and even on our Instagram page, we get asked questions about ourselves, how we deal with money, how we deal with budgets. So I put it to the Facebook group. If you have any questions to ask me about money management, frugality, budgeting, now is your choice and I am going to answer those questions. So today I am going to be answering your questions about money, about frugality. Some of them relate to us, some of them are opinion-based questions or how do you do quite questions. So without further ado, I'm going to start answering all of your questions. The first question is from Pedro Martins, and Pedro asks, how long have you been living a life of frugality and why did you make that choice? I'm going to answer this as quickly as I can because 26 years of us being together is a big thing. 26 years ago when Mike and I got together, I had 2 kids, so we amalgamated, we became a blended family. So we came together and we didn't have any money. We had a meter in which you paid in advance for your electricity. We had no phone, we had no internet, we had no car. We were literally living in dire circumstances. We had nothing, absolutely nothing at all. We could barely get the money together to pay for the food and to pay for the bills. So we learned absolutely starkly and the hard way of how to get by with money. If we needed to go anywhere at all, the only option we had was walking. So we could only go anywhere within walking distance. Our circumstances improved. Mike took classes and improved his qualifications. I took classes, improved my qualifications. I went to university. As a mature student, I qualified as a teacher. And when we suddenly had more money, our circumstances changed. And what came into our life is what is commonly called lifestyle creep. We borrowed money to renovate a house. We borrowed money to buy a car. We then had things like credit cards, which we would buy to buy more things to renovate the house. And all of a sudden we had ourselves a big pile of debt. Our circumstances changed drastically in 2009 when we wanted to move house, and the underwriters said, no, you have too much money on personal borrowing. So we decided at that point to pay off £45,000 of personal debt. We lived frugally then, we've lived frugally ever since, to live under our means, and when we became debt free, we became savers and not spenders. The next question is from Vicky Fox. What's your favourite part of seeing the results of your budgeting and being frugal? Vicky, that is a superb question. For me, it's peace of mind. It really, really is. The fact of being budgeting means that every single month that we practice living beneath our means. So that might mean that lots of things that you do or that other people do, we choose not to do. So we live beneath our means. The greatest part of being frugal was the fact that we've downsized houses. We've not upscaled anything. So we've always bought less than we can afford. And because of that, we've always been 1 or 2 footsteps ahead of our budget. And that means when hard times comes, when price rises come, we've got that little bit of buffer because we always live not a bit below our means, but considerably below our means. And that is where frugality has worked for us. But thanks, Vicky, that was a great question. The next lovely question is from Pat Hayden, and Pat asks, should we stockpile food that are on offer and keep the supermarket bill down? And Pat's talking about shelf-stable food. Okay, Pat, it's a really interesting question, but it is circumstantial and it is hypothetical. It really depends on where you live and your circumstances, doesn't it? If you live absolutely in the middle of nowhere, if you live where it is so expensive to get in your car and drive to go and get fuel, if you live where the weather is terrible and you could be shut in at home for days on end, all the supermarkets are shut, all the roads are closed, there are so many if, buts and maybes that you all need to take into consideration. If you have a job in the gig economy, where you really do not have any stability to your job, where you can work one week and have no work the next, all of those might be circumstances and reasons unique to you as while you should keep a stockpile. We keep what I call a stock. So I've always got a week, 2-3 weeks worth of food in the house, but I don't live where we have extreme weather. I have a steady pension income coming in each and every month. We've got enough to get by. We've got enough in savings. But to answer your question, Pat, that is a unique question for every single person, and they need to look at their circumstances and what suits them. But thank you, Pat. That was a great question. My next question is from Annette Cully. Great question, by the way, Annette. With things going up so fast, how do you make sinking funds go around when there is no more? Annette, it's a great question, and I can only answer this from our personal perspective. We have lots of different sinking funds, and they range from things that we have to pay for, the tax, you would call it the property tax, the bin charges, all of those things that are sinking funds that are paid for annually. We have things like the car service. We have other things on there that are non-essential. We have clothing on that list. We have holidays and trips out on that list. We have a fund for our garden. We have birthdays and Christmas. All of those actually are non-essential. And in the most desperate and hard times in the past, when we were literally living in poverty, we couldn't buy any of those things. So those are the circumstances. The other part of this, Annette, I think if you're any age under 70, 75 years old, and you are in those circumstances, you have to up your income. And that is exactly what I would do here. We live in a very touristic area. We would jiggle our house around. We would rent out rooms. We have a ground floor at the moment that isn't even used at all. We might turn it into an apartment. There's water and electricity down there, for example. We would do everything and anything, first of all, to earn more money. And we would do everything and anything to cut out anything that wasn't essential to staying alive. And I know you're listening to this now, and I do not know your personal circumstances, and your circumstances might be like all the other people who may be absolutely on the breadline, and the only circumstances there are for people in those situations is sadly, and people don't like being told the absolute, is you have to earn more money. I have a very similar question to Annette's question, this time from Gail Kanak. I'm sorry if that's how I pronounce your name. Sorry, Gail, if it's wrong. Gail asks, how do you decide which items to eliminate when there is not enough money? How do you prioritise? And like I said about Mike and I in the beginning of our relationship, all we could afford was to stay alive. Mike and I couldn't afford any clothes. I used to mend my bras. I used to mend his underpants. I used to mend his socks and my socks. We kept those going for years. If anybody needed anything, it was the children only. We paid for food. We kept our bills to the absolute minimum. We didn't turn a light on if we were not in that room. We didn't heat a room if we were not in that room. So what do you decide to eliminate, Gail, When there is not enough money, how do you prioritise? You prioritise survival. That's it. Nothing more than that matters. And I say this all the time, and it's about having perspective. If you keep the roof over your head, if there is any food on your table, if your lights are on and you can wash, in comparison to so many people globally, you're still doing better than many of those other people. That doesn't mean to say that everything is rosy. It is not. But how do you prioritise? You prioritise survival. And anything more than that is fluff. It's the gravy on the dinner. You eat the meat, you eat the vegetables, anything else. You eat the bread, if you put butter on it, the jam on it, anything else is an extra. So what do you prioritise? You prioritise survival. Next question is by Monica Ams. Monica asks, how much do you save each month for a car replacement? And what monetary goals do you have for a car replacement? Okay, we start saving for a new car when we've bought the last one. So the day that we make that payment for the new to us car is when you start making a payment for the next one. Now we have just bought a new to us car that comes with 3.5 years of warranty. Came with the price. So how we work out how much we need to save for the next car is that we have decided the earliest time we will replace this car will be in 3 years' time. And it's quite a very small, easy amount of mathematics. That means that's 36 months. So we know how much we paid for a car. We know the difference between what the car will be worth, and that's an approximation because we cannot see into the future, with how much we need to add to that price to buy another new to us car. We then do the simple mathematics and we take that nominal amount of money and we divide it by 36, because that's 36 months of savings. So that's what we do. So we look at that, and if it's 10 years and that's 12 months and you decide over that, that's 120 months of savings you're going to have to make. So that's how we do it. We take a number, we divide it by how many months there are, and then we make sure we're saving that amount. So that's how we do it. So our monetary goal is the earliest we will replace it is in 3 years. We may replace it after that, but we need to have that money in place in 3 years' time, and that's how we set or make that goal. Thanks for your question, Monica. Good question. We've got a great question now from Sarah Black. Sarah Black asks, when did you start saving to retire? Now, as British people, we have a different way of having pensions. I think just about every country's got a different way of having pensions. In the UK, you pay towards your state pension from the day you start work, all the way through. So anybody out there who think that all these pensioners are getting this money for nothing, they didn't. They've paid into that system all of their working lives. And you get the UK state pension at us. It's different for younger people now, but for Mike and I, we will get ours at 67 years old. At some stage in our lives, Mike and I had jobs and not careers. And when we got together, we decided to change our destiny, to change our fate, our outcome in the future. So we literally retrained to do jobs that had pensions. The best advice I could give to anybody, people say, well, some jobs have got no pension. Don't do that job. Do not do a job that doesn't come with any benefits. Choose your destiny, choose your future. And from the day we started our careers, we opted into the pension systems. And for all those years that we were together, about those 20 years that we were in those jobs, we were paying in between 700 and 800 a month into our pensions. So, you know, how long were we doing it? I mean, if we'd have had any sense, we'd have gone into careers at the early stages of our life, but we didn't, but we turned it around as soon as we could. So we don't have a fund, we don't have a pot of money, we don't have those kind of pensions. Some pensions at a certain age give you the pot of money, and you then you literally take it from one fund to your fund and you decide what to do with it. We don't have those type of pensions. We have the pensions where we get an amount of money every single month until the day we die. The next question comes from Sherry Scoville. And Sherry, you've asked my favourite question. And Sherry says, how do you plan for inflation situations like now? Sherry, thank you for that question. I'm 57 years old and I have seen economic bad times many times in my life. I grew up as a child in the 1970s and I saw extremely high inflation, extremely high prices. I saw boom and bust in the 80s. I saw people with houses in negative equity. We then saw again more boom and bust up through the 90s. We've just seen it. And then we saw it in 2007, a massive financial crash, houses again in negative equity. We've been there, we've seen it, we've got the t-shirt, we've had the souvenir photo taken, we've been there, Sherry. This is nothing new to any of us. And my answer to this is this: we know bad times are coming. We know we can lose a job. We know a partner can die. We know our house can go into negative equity. We know all of that. We know the fecal matter is going to meet the oscillating machine. We know it. We can't just sleepwalk into these financial disasters one after the next thinking like, oh, didn't see that coming. It's going to happen. And this is what we decided to do, and that was to be debt-free. Never borrow money ever again. We haven't done it since we paid off our debts. We have never borrowed money ever again. We decided from there onwards to live as far as we possibly could below our means. And that means we have as many no-spend months as we can a year. We make sure we only buy what we need. We're not just going out and buying stuff that we want. It's not that we never buy that we want, but we budget it. We budget for it really carefully. So we always do that. We create a buffer. If you are debt-free, if you've downsized your house to the smallest accommodation you can absolutely bear to live in, if you are living on as least money as you can possibly spend each and every month, when financial hard times comes, you might only be a slither, but you've got a buffer, and that's what we've done. In short, we fixed the roof when the sun was shining. We saved money when we were earning it. That's what we did. So an example would be, when we moved here, we were completely debt and mortgage free, and we had some savings as well. And we had equity from property selling that we could and did put aside for things like anything else we needed to do to the house. For example, rebuilding a barn on our land to use for wood. But what we always did is when we arrived here is I did that typical immigrant thing. I unpacked my bags and I started working 6 days a week. I just took 1 day off a week. And I worked as many hours as I possibly could. I was working 50 hours a week sometimes. I had 2 jobs on the go. I was working for Wales English. I was working for iTutor Group. I was doubling my hours. I was literally flexing my hours, and all of that money we saved. We knew at some stage we needed a French car. We knew how much that was going to cost us, and we literally worked and worked and saved and saved. So how do you plan for inflation? Like I said, When you've got work, you maximise it. When you can save, you maximise it. When you've got an income, you live as far as you possibly can below it, and you create a buffer. And when these financial economic times happen again and again and again, you accept it, you're ready for it, and it's more of a pain in the neck than a crisis. Now got a really great question from Alison Hooton. And Alison asks, when you've made mistakes with your budget, how do you pick yourself up? Really good question, Alison. A budget is not a static thing. A budget is something that you rewrite and readdress and look at for the year ahead. So you know the things that are coming up over the year, but you specifically know what is going to happen in that every single month. So that budget is unique to that month. You know in that month, for example, how much money you will release from a sinking fund or put into that sinking fund. So we knew, for example, with the rising food prices, that we were being optimistic with our shopping budget. That meant we've had to recalibrate our budget. That means we've got slightly less going into savings. We've got slightly less going into our discretionary spending. It always means that we have to cut back and cut back and cut back from our discretionary spending. In short, it means there's less and less and less for what we want, because we're having to put slightly more at the moment into what we need. But how do you pick yourself up from that, Alison? You need to look at your budget, you need to see what isn't working, and you need to recalibrate it. But I would say this, a budget is a forward plan. So if in that budget, you know, it says on your budget you have 50 euros for discretionary spending. Once that 50 euros is spent, if you spend all of that on the first of the month, you have nothing to spend for the rest of the month. And you've got to sit indoors and twiddle your thumb or do your knitting or watch TV. It's gone, Alison. And that isn't about self-control. That is about that habit that you build up all the time. And here is an example. I like to go to charity shops and I buy things like bedding for like sheets and pillowcases that I cut up and use for my quilting. And I know when I go in, I've got a 10 euro note, a 10 euro bill. I can't go in there, Alison, and spend 15 euros because I haven't got 15 euros. That's it. And that is the mindset that I have, because it's a forward plan. And in the same way, when I set a budget for energy or a budget for the fuel for the car, our budget for the fuel for the car is 75 euros. So we go there, we put the nozzle in the car, and when it gets to 75 euros, thunk, we stop. That's it. But I would say, Alison, is when you do make mistakes, if you do go over, which I don't know how you can go over, what are you doing? Are you going over into savings? Are you going over into into an overdraft? Are you going over into credit cards? Because like I said, we have no debt facilities at all. We don't use any debt facilities. For example, we have no credit cards. We have no facilities for debt whatsoever. We have no debt facility on our bank accounts. So there's no way. So that's what we can do. But I would say, Alison, if you do have those debt facilities, if you are doing that and you are going over, what you're going to have to do is pay yourself back, and you're just going to have to, the next single month or 3 months after that, you'll have to allow yourselves no discretionary spending, because you've got to pay that back. Oh, I don't like giving answers that people don't like to hear, but sometimes I have to. Okay, the next question comes from Kitty Rice. Kitty says, how do you deal with other people? I have a family who want to go to expensive restaurants and it's not within my budget. Okay, Kitty, I'm really sorry that this is happening to you to start with. I'm really sorry that your family, of all people, are treating you like that. And I have a very simple answer to all of this. I only do what is within my budget. And that's it. If I can't afford to go to a wedding, I don't go. If I can't afford to go to a restaurant, I don't go. If I can't afford to be involved in a social group, I don't take part in that social group. If I can't afford to go on the works Christmas do, I don't go. It is as simple as that. And Kitty, you don't owe anybody an apology. You don't owe anybody an explanation. If that's the money you've got, that's it. But I'll reiterate what I said to begin with, Kitty. I'm very sorry that people are treating you like this. You may have to put your foot down a bit more firmly though. You may have to say to people absolutely and categorically, I can't go, I can't afford to go, and every time you leave me out of this by going to somewhere that's not within my budget, I feel that you're being cruel to me and unkind to me, it's hurting me and it's really upsetting me. If they continue to do that after that, Kitty, for your own preservation, you just have to step back and just not do these things. Thank you to absolutely everybody who asked me a question. If I didn't answer your question here, please look on Facebook to where you left your question and I will answer your question there, even if I decide to privately message you from there, because it might be a question that I don't feel is the right thing for a public forum. Anyway, thank you again to everybody. I really enjoyed doing that. And again, if there's any other questions that you want to ask us, leave it in the comment below. If any of the questions that have been asked today that you want to join in with that conversation, please go ahead and leave a comment. Thank you to everybody who's a subscriber and all the new subscribers. It's really good to have you part of this Frugal family. And if you're not a subscriber, go on, come and join the family. I've just got one thing to ask you. If you enjoyed the video, make sure that you give it a like, because it really helps us get the videos out there. Just leaves me to say, on behalf of Mike and I, thank you ever so much, everyone. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.